Welcome to the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast, where we delve into the minds of elite athletes and coaches to uncover their secrets behind their success. I'm your host, Sean Garris, former university wrestling coach, D1 wrestler, national champion, Olympic trials medalist, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a three-time world team coach in grappling, and author. Join me as we explore the realms of training, mindset, goal setting, overcoming adversity, and various coaching methodologies in the world of sports. Get ready to be inspired and motivated as we learn from the best in the game on our journey to achieving greatness. This is part 2 of the 2-part series.
Yeah, you know what? I was in the gym and I remember squatting, watching myself in the mirror, and one side was dipping over the other.
Yeah.
As coming up, and I of course, being when you lift, your ego gets in the way, and you're talking about some of the freshmen who's having ego. Well, you didn't say that. I'm putting words in your mouth, but egos. Yeah. And I think it comes hand in hand.
Wrong.
Yeah, comes hand in hand with the sport. But I had to back off and lighten things up, and then I've been able to creep slowly back into what my numbers were before, but it was certainly an ego blow when I if you want to fix it, you gotta slow down.
And that's and to your point, because I'm the same way, right? Like if you never want to have to back down once you reach a certain point, and to your point, like with those guys, like they might be a little upset with us, because we're holding them back, so to speak, for those first couple of weeks. But it's a lot easier to do that straight out of the gate than it is if you have a guy that you've allowed to do something incorrectly for 2-3 years, and now it's gotten to the point where it is a big issue, right? Because if you're doing something fundamentally wrong, eventually it's going to catch up with you. Right. And the heavier that you get and the stronger that you get, the more consequences are going to be involved when something's not right. And so it's a lot harder, and especially to your point of the ego, it's a lot harder once you built yourself up to a certain point to then pull back and then rebuild, as it is just straight from the get-go, straight away, first day in the door. Hey, we're going to start right, and we're going to build the foundation correctly.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I grew up lifting. My dad really didn't care for it, to tell you the truth. I didn't start lifting until about 14. My dad had no time for it. He wrestled for Oklahoma State. And he when I see videos of him wrestling, he was a 6'5", very, very Dutch build, kind of natural, thick guy. Yeah. But he didn't want me lifting weights at all. So all the learning that I did was through Muscle and Fitness, was watching other people in the gym.
Flex magazine. I don't know if you had Flex.
Yeah, Flex magazine. Yeah. They would all come across the borders. It was Wheeler. What was it? Joe Wheeler and Arnold and all that. So my schooling in the beginning was all from these magazines. There wasn't YouTube, anything around. So whatever it was, and I find out later that here I am trying to lift weights like these guys that have doped themselves up beyond belief with anabolic steroids. And I'll never be able to lift or bench press what they're going to do, but I sure as hell tried at 14 years old. Strength training, the science of strength training has changed over the years, and with the advent of social media too, I guess. But for you, what is the most important improvement that you've seen, in your time, that's really kind of catapulted our, progress within the sport?
It's interesting that you just use the word catapult, because I think that's the answer, right? So Catapult is a GPS tracking software device. So it's a little device. I used to say it's the size of a beeper, but no one knows what that is anymore. It's about the size of an egg, right? And our guys are able to wear it. So I got really lucky back when I was at Elon that I had some connections at Catapult. So this is going back about 10 years ago, and was able to kind of start demoing them out and trying them out and playing around with them. Absolutely fell in love with them. Got to use them at Temple. We had 85 units. Basically, everybody, every guy on our team had a unit. I actually, talking about being in this a while. So I was the director of sports science at Georgia Tech. Was the previous school that I was at before I came to Buffalo. And we use them there. We use them here at Buffalo. The data that we're able to pull from that, to be able to see how much yardage guys cover during a practice, during a training session, during a game, to be able to see the amount of times they change direction, their sprint distance, their velocities, their accelerations, all of their running asymmetries, right? We get all this just unbelievable data from all of our guys, and it helps us in so many areas. So first, it helps us from the standpoint of, conditioning with college football. When I first started off, and really up until very recently, most schools for their conditioning did one of two things. They did half gassers, which you line up on the sideline and you run to the other sideline and you run back, right? And you get an allotted amount of time depending on your position, or you ran 110s. So you start at the back of the end zone and you run 110 yards. And again, depending on your position, you had an allotted amount of time to make it. So that's what you spent all summer doing for your conditioning. You did half gassers, you did 110s, and then that was your conditioning test at the end of the summer to see if you were in shape or not. And so you're running in that manner as your primary conditioning, and then you get the football practice day one, and nothing you do looks anything like that whatsoever. And so there was always the cliche of, well, there's summer shape and then there's football shape, right? So you run all summer and you get in shape, but then football shape's different, right? You gotta give yourself a couple weeks to get into football shape. Well, the reason for that is because we weren't conditioning, we weren't training in the manner that they were doing on the field, right? But the only thing that we knew how to quantify was, we'll give a distance, we'll give a time to make, and then, that's your pass, that's your fail. But with Catapult, what we're able to do is we can see by position, a wide receiver is going to cover this X amount of yards during a game. They're going to change direction X amount of times. They're going to have this many high-speed accelerations. They're going to have this many high-speed decelerations. And so what we're able to do is we're able to put together a profile by position of what are their demands in a game, all right? And then what are their demands going to be in practice? And then what we do is we just work backwards from that into the summertime. And so when we go out for a conditioning test, for a conditioning session in the summer, it looks like practice from a physical demand standpoint. The amount of times that we accelerate, we decelerate, we change direction, how much yardage we're covering, all of those things. And we can go back and we can look at the data and make sure that as we're progressing guys from June all the way through July, that what they're going to get ready to do in August when we get to camp, when we get to practice, that what we're doing mimics what they're going to do. So then that transition from summer to camp to end season is a lot more seamless. And then the other piece of it too is, I can't tell you early on in my career, like as a strength coach, when you get to football practice, you become an observer, right? You're able to take a step back and you just observe practice. And the amount of times that as a staff, we would have conversations of, do we think we're doing too much? How do the guys look? Do we look a little run down? But going into a staff meeting or going into a coach's office and trying to be the voice of, hey, coach, I think we're doing too much. We may need to pull back a little bit. Those conversations were really hard to have because it was just your opinion versus their opinion. And, as a football coach, if you become a head football coach, those jobs are very hard to come by. And guys work, 15, 20, 30 years of their career to get to that position and to be able to, and to make that big of a change to do less preparation, from if you just kind of looking at it from that standpoint, that's really hard to kind of stomach sometimes. But now that we have the data, it becomes less opinion based and it's more data driven. to where we can say, hey coach, here's how we looked week 1. Here's how we look week 5. Here's how we look week 9. Here's how guys are responding. Here's how guys are moving around. Here's, how much workload that, this particular player had in this game, and, now we may need to look at, modifying what this guy is doing during the week so that he's ready to go back out on Saturday and do it again, right? So we're not just doing more and more and more and more. And without Catapult, I don't think a lot of these conversations would have ever been able to really happen. So we're able to be a lot more data driven and how we go about our training, and then how we go about our decision making when we're in season. And I think that in the time from when I started to now has completely changed a lot of what we do in strength conditioning.
Mm-hmm. I think, Catapult is that available to the average person, or is it the universities only, or like, where is that?
So they do have, and I'm not really well versed on it, but they do have now to where you can, as an individual, that you can get an individual unit. You can get you can download your software package, your app, to get your own data from your own training sessions. I'm not well versed in exactly how that works, but I know that is an option that at least I'm 90% sure that is an option that they do have available. Okay.
Do you know what the price would be? Because I'm sure people are, are listening going, I wonder what the price of that would be. So that's why I'm asking.
No idea. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It'd be a complete shot in the dark.
Yeah. No, well, that's our homework for our listeners. They can actually do a Google search and take a look at that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you with training, it's evolved where the bench press and I think strength training back in the 60s, even it was bench press, squats, and just pretty much that. Now you're saying what's going on, it's more data driven. You are looking for movements in sports, and trying to mimic that in the strength training room as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And another piece of data that we have, that we use in the weight room now is a lot of velocity based training, right? So we use a product called Perch, which can measure bar speed. And so even when we are squatting, even when we are benching and doing those things, we're not always just going by more weight and how much weight is on the bar, but it's also a matter of how fast are we moving that weight. And again, it comes back to improving performance on the football field. My job, we have a player on our team right now. If we just allowed him to just put what he could actually do on the bar, he's probably an 800 plus pound squatter. He's maybe the strongest athlete that I've ever worked with in 20 years. But he does not squat. He's never squatted anything over 605 with me. And so what he works on more is how can I take the strength that I have and just produce more power and become more powerful and more explosive. Because adding more and more and more weight isn't going to, he's at a point now where that's getting 10 pounds stronger is not going to help him in the football field. So if we can get more explosive, right, because he's a defensive end, and I can get off the line faster, right, and I can get around that tackle faster, that's what's going to make an impact to what he's doing on the field. So, not just, it's movement patterns and training like an athlete, and then using that data outside the weight room and inside the weight room. All right, I don't know if that answers your question. I might have veered off a little bit on that one.
No, that was great. I mean, it's all good information. I'm going to let you veer off, even because you still got some. You're the expert, but there's everything you're saying is going to hit well with the listeners. The other thing you talked a little bit about injury prevention. I'm thinking, like when I was working out and doing sports, there's always that muscle soreness afterwards. How do you deal with that? Are you just keeping like the loads lower, or what are you doing to keep the athlete from overtraining so that it doesn't carry over to the sport?
So that's a great question. So we we use a system. It's called the system. Okay, so it's called the system. And it was developed by Johnny Parker, Alvin Miro, and Rob Perinello. And it's a book. If your listeners want to look it up, it's called The System. And basically, what they did, all very, very, very well respected strength coaches, and they went to, back then, the Russians, were kicking everybody's butt in all of the power sports, the Olympic sports, the shot put, discus, that kind of thing. And so they wanted to see kind of how they were training their athletes there, right? And they took this model and then adapted it to athletes that, for U.S. athletes that are in team sports and different things of that nature. And essentially what it does is it forces you to break down every rep, every set for every exercise that you're doing. And, this could be a whole podcast in of itself, but the way that it's set up, it's based on undulating periodization, which just means that you're manipulating volume, so the total amount of reps that you're doing, and you're manipulating intensity, which is the load, it's the percentage of your max that you're doing that day for the different lifts, and you're waving it basically to where volume may be up one week, but intensity comes down that week. And there is no haphazard, I'm going to put a set of 3 at 80% on the sheet for that day. Every rep is planned out on 4-week cycles, and it's planned in a way that you're not going to lead to burnout. You're not going to lead to fatigue. You're not going to lead to overtraining. Every 4 weeks, every 4th week is a deload week. We're going to pull back on both the intensity and the volume and allow those. And we just came off of that last week to allow your athletes to get their legs back, get their body back, to get a little bit of almost an active recovery week. You're still training, but compared to the first 3 weeks, it's a big pullback in volume. It's a big pullback in intensity. We call it speed week, to where you're just moving lighter weights, moving it really fast. But it allows you to then, like we are this week, crank back up again with that volume and intensity. And you're able to do that long term, right? To where if you're not controlling your volume and intensity and you're just doing more and you're doing more and you're doing more and you're doing more, eventually that cumulative fatigue is going to catch up with you. And that's when you're going to end up with, athletes coming in like, hey, coach, my knees are kind of, hey, my back's kind of, that tendonitis and all of those, chronic issues that's going to creep up on you. That's what you're going to run into. So that's kind of how we control it and manipulate it is just based on how we periodize and how we plan out from week to week to make sure that we're not, just trying to go up and to the right. And then eventually, you're going to crash into the wall.
Mm-hmm. How is nutrition play a role in that with recovery, I guess?
Huge. Mm-hmm. It's huge. So we're very blessed here. We're the only school in our conference that has a full-time nutritionist that works just with football, and it's a game changer for us. So our nutrition station sits directly across the hallway from the locker room. Right. So when guys come into the building, the first 2 places they go is the locker room, and then right across the hallway, we have a full breakfast set up for them every day where they're able to come in and get breakfast. And then we have lunch catered in for them at the end of the day. So to take a step back for a second, the way that we break up our schedule is all of our football, all of our training is all blocked off, and we do all that in the morning. And then classes for our guys are all in the afternoon, 90% probably in the afternoon. A couple of guys will have an evening class here or there as they get into, maybe if we've got someone in graduate school, something like that. And so they start their day with breakfast, right? And then we're training or practicing or whatever we have that day. And then before they leave with us, they're finishing that morning with lunch being handed to them. And it's a game changer for us. We are big proponents of not just nutrition, but we're also big proponents of sleep, right? And that's not something that we just pay lip service to. This is in 20 plus years of doing this. This is the first head football coach that I've ever worked for. We do not have a 6 a.m. training group, right? And within college football culture, now sometimes it's a necessity because of class schedules, right? You have to train early in the morning because you've got multiple training groups that you need to get in, and to get everybody in before everyone has to go to class, you have to start really early in the morning. Well, we're very blessed that, our academic department does a really great job of blocking our guys' schedules, but we do not get guys up earlier than we need to, right? So if we can get our guys an extra hour of sleep, extra hour and a half of sleep, we do it. Because the better that we can do from a nutrition standpoint, the better that we can do from a sleep standpoint is going to absolutely maximize what we're doing from a training standpoint.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important announcement.
Looking for top-tier healthcare in the GTA? Look no further than the Core Optimum Health Center. Founded by Dr. Pat Graham, official chiropractor for the Toronto Blue Jays, their clinic offers a wide range of services including physiotherapy, chiropractic care, acupuncture, massage therapy, naturopath, and more, all in a caring professional environment. They also are proud partners with the Shift Concussion Management Program, offering the latest concussion care and online neurocognitive impact testing at their Mississauga location. At the Core, your health is their priority. Visit the Core Optimum Health Center today and experience industry-leading care.
Sorry, I had a brain fart there. I have post-concussion syndrome, so sometimes I forget where I was, but that's why I have my notes in front of me. Speaking of concussions, do you guys do anything for concussions there when it comes to rehabilitation with are they back in the weights, or is it just a slow progress?
So it's so we take that from a case-by-case basis. So if someone is unfortunate enough to get a concussion, that's going to fall underneath our sports med staff, right? So they're going to take that, they're going to handle that. We actually have one of the leading scientists for concussion study that actually works at our university, and so the procedures that we have in place for that are really, really good. But our sports med staff is going to handle all of that. Now, from a prevention standpoint, part of it is equipment, right? That we try to get the best equipment that is out and available right now to try to help minimize that. From a training standpoint, the biggest thing that we have found is the stronger your neck, that's the best thing that you can do to help minimize your risk of concussion. And that's something that we'll do at least once a week, just something purely neck focused, right? I'm sure wrestlers are very familiar with neck training. Yeah. That's something we'll do at least once a week, and most often we're going to hit twice a week, just all different shapes, forms, and fashion, like neck harness, manual, partner neck, every which way that we can think about to try to strengthen that neck area is really the biggest, as far as from a research standpoint, that we found to try to minimize the risk. Again, football is football. You're playing a contact sport. You have some very large human beings that are running very, very fast and running into each other. So sometimes unfortunate things happen, but that's kind of that's what we try to do to one, help minimize it on the back end. And then, if someone does, end up getting one, then that's something that the sports med staff is going to take over.
Mm-hmm. A quick question. I'm going to ask you if you've ever seen this device, but it's I did a podcast with a doctor on concussions, and he was talking about football and concussions. Couple things. One with this device there was a football helmet. There was a spring
Top
on
Spin 360.
Yeah, that's it. So you've seen. Okay.
We had those at Georgia Tech.
Okay.
I'm actually a really big fan of them.
Okay, and they were. Yeah. They were good. They helped out, you figure?
I do. I really do. I think from from an awareness, from a just from a body awareness standpoint, and from a dynamic strength standpoint. I thought we saw some really good things with those when I was there. Yeah, so very familiar. So when I was at Georgia Tech, we hosted the Super Bowl. We didn't host the Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl was in Atlanta that year. And those guys from Top Spin 360 came down. The NFL put together I want to say it was called the First and Future Conference. But they had a panel of NFL exec people, different, just a wide variety of people. And it was almost like a Shark Tank kind of thing where they had these companies come on and pitch their ideas for different things from a health and player wellness standpoint. And that's when we first saw them. And then, we went up and met the guys afterwards and got in contact and was able to get a couple of those there when they were just very first kind of starting out with getting them out. But yeah, really, really big fan.
Yeah, I think they run quite a bit of money too. I think not the average person wouldn't be able to get something like that.
So for part of our cost was mitigated by the fact that we already had helmets.
Yeah.
They were able to basically, I don't know if retrofit is the right word, but they were able to fit their devices on the helmets that we already had. Because I think a football helmet now can run anywhere up to about $1,000. And I can't remember the exact number of what it was for them to then fit their device with it. But yeah, it would be a touch expensive if you were starting from scratch.
Yeah. Couple more questions before I let you go. One, you've worked with high level athletes. What are the common habits and traits that you've seen in them in the weight room?
That's a great question. I would say, especially with like the great athletes that you get that you're blessed to just kind of be a part of the journey is just their level of dedication, level of commitment, level of attention to detail, first guy in, last guy out, just how much commitment that you see from those guys of just coming in every single day, wanting to get better, not leaving anything on the table, and just doing everything in their ability to maximize every single thing they can, whether they're doing speed work or mobility work or lifting or whatever it is that they're doing. And then also is going to carry over to football, right? Whether it's watching film, getting extra field work, working drills. We have guys that will, again, with our indoor attached to our weight room, which is where my office is, seeing our guys, some of our guys that we have on our team right now that are just, on a Saturday morning and a Tuesday afternoon and outside of what they're doing with us, just coming in and catching balls and doing extra work. Just seeing that level of just complete commitment to their craft is really inspiring to see.
And last question I kind of got for you here. I'm a football coach with our Junior Griffins program in Guelph, Ontario here. And just wondering what kind of advice you would have for those young kids that are maybe getting involved in strength training, just for their football program.
Mm-hmm. I would say one, try to, as much as you can, if you can find someone that can help you with technique on all of those things first and foremost, right? To find someone, whether it's go into a facility or someone at the school or whatever the case may be, someone that can help teach them how to do things correctly. Because, I was talking earlier about, getting a freshman in our weight room and looking at it as, hey, we've got a 4 to 5 year window to develop. There's no need to be in a rush, right? We can break things down and start with the bar and then work our way up. Well, if you're talking about even younger, I worked at a private facility where we would have 10 and 12 year olds, that would come in and train. And now you're talking about potentially a 10-year window, right? And so, don't be in that rush. Like you were talking about, like with us, with our muscle and fitness magazines, when we were 14 and wanting to be, Jay Cutler and Flex Wheeler, right? Don't need to be that overnight. But try to start with your technique, start with the basics, learn how to do a proper squat, learn how to do a proper push-up, learn how to properly hinge, which is going to lead to whether they end up with into Olympic lifts later on, or even with deadlifts and RDLs. And then it really comes down to consistency. One of the things that, from just a core value, one of the things that I love about strength training is you can't fake it. It's earned, right? And it's earned through consistency. You can't just show up one day, right? And unless you're a 0.001%, kind of just a physically gifted, anomaly. You can't just walk into the weight room and be the strongest guy in there. It doesn't work that way. Like, you have to earn that through consistency over time. And, and starting with an athlete that's younger, if you learn the basics and you're consistent, you're not going to be Jay Cutler, Flex Wheeler in 2 weeks, but you'll be really surprised at how much progress you can make over a year, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, with just doing the basics really, really well and being really, really consistent.
Yeah, and I think that's what kids don't get these days, is they want immediate results. They don't want to take the time, and I think that's the big message, right? Is take your time, develop the core skill set that'll make your body into something that actually works when you get older.
And there's that.
You must have some athletes coming in that you kind of that have probably lifted like us growing up and didn't, like, I'll tell you, up here in Canada, if you probably won't find a strength training coach in a high school. I don't know. I'm sure I've seen some really good schools in the US where they've got a lot of people on staff just to help the football team or whatever team. But for guidance, when it comes to lifting, there's not a lot unless you go private, like you did, or sorry, like you were stationed at a private facility. You worked at a private facilities, right?
Private facility. So it was private training facility. So it was a business. We weren't affiliated with any schools, but I get what you mean. Like, it's a wide array here in the U.S. You have some higher end schools. You'll find strength coaches, but a lot of schools, like you're saying, a lot of schools here in the U.S. The strength coach is the assistant football coach that maybe played college football, and here you go. Now you're running the weight room.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, if I was coming in to play football for Buffalo, brand new recruit, in my age, at my age when I was younger, I'd be confused the hell, coming into a program and going, what? I was lifting like this. I thought I was doing everything right. Obviously, right. Speaking to you today, there's a lot more than just going in and banging the weights and throwing them around. There's a little more to it that's got to be done properly to actually make an impact on your performance.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk about your knowledge on the sport of strength training for football. And I wish you guys the best of luck this year in football. I'm always cheering for the MAC. I was part of the MAC over there at Eastern Michigan. So hopefully you guys do well.
I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on, and it's a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you for tuning into the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast. I hope you found today's episode insightful and inspiring. Your support means the world to us, so don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a comment in the section below. Your feedback fuels our journey to bring you more valuable content and stories from the realm of sports. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries, believing in yourself, and achieving greatness. Thank you for listening.